So there's like some big official invite kind of thing or something, like when the city hall.
Okay, can you hear us on people joining remotely?
A committee generally first.
Yeah.
To hear your
Yes.
Awesome. So sorry for the delay. So I've started recording the meeting. We'll call this meeting of the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee to order. And we will start with roll call. The time now is 8:38. Really apologize for the delay. So I'll start with roll call. Aaron Artiaga, sorry. Thank you. Anna Baliakova. Mitchell Henke.
Present.
Montavious Jones. Kathleen Minnick.
Present.
Thank you. Ben Teal.
Present.
Thank you. Barry Weber.
Present.
Thank you. Welcome new member Michael Anderson.
Present.
Awesome. Stephen Owen.
Here.
Monica Walk-Smith.
Present.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Chair Mitchell Henke.
Cool. Thank you. So with that, we are called to order and done roll call. First item on the agenda is approving the minutes from our last meeting, which was in October. So if any committee members got a chance to take a look, make sure they're accurate, nothing was missing. Otherwise, I would hear a motion to approve them.
Motion to approve. Kathy.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Well, I wasn't there, but they look okay to me. So if no one else wants to second, I can do it. Second.
Perfect. Thank you, Barry and Kathleen. Hearing no objections, minutes from previous meeting are approved. This wasn't an agenda item, but I did want to take a minute to welcome our new member, Michael Anderson. I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself, say a couple things.
Sure. Yeah, I know many of you on the call, as well as in the room. I work for the Wisconsin Bike Fed. I'm our youth programs manager. So the bulk of that role is liaising with Milwaukee Public Schools. So I'm here to begin to learn with you and then hopefully act as a conduit so we can improve some of our communications on school-related projects.
Cool. I'm really glad to have you. People, well, might remember, but Michael's been here in the past. The big thing that I recall was the change to biking on playgrounds. I believe you were heavily involved in that, and the committee, I think, endorsed that. That was great. That was last year.
Yeah, like a year and a half ago, probably.
But yeah, glad to have you. Hopefully, we can do more great stuff like that. And with that, I think we can get to the first agenda item, which is a discussion on the city's kind of policies and procedures for no right turn on red. I think we have a couple DPW people here to speak to that. And I wanted to bring this up because there are, I think, various ways that these signs and decisions are made, some as part of projects, I assume, and some come from either residents via their alders, or alders have their own kind of suggestions.
Yeah.
To study that.
Sure. Yeah. So Chair and members of the committee, Kevin Muse, city engineer for the Department of Public Works. Essentially my role is the director of our infrastructure services division, which oversees transportation among other things in the city. So I'm happy to discuss no right turn on red.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. Scott Reinbacher here with DPW Traffic Engineering. So my group, we design, operate, maintain, and assist construction staff that builds the city of Milwaukee's signalized network, signing systems, as well as marking systems. And we also serve as an ad hoc to all of our project development groups. So historically, my group has been responsible for implementing right turn on red, or I should say, no right turn on red restrictions throughout the city. So nice to see everyone again today.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you both for being here. For, I guess, some context, I did a little bit of like research because there have been some county council files that have amended or added these signs. Most recently, it looked like it was for the streetcar movements, no right turn on red for Clybourne at Broadway, Michigan at Milwaukee, Milwaukee at St. Paul and St. Paul and Bel-Air Phillips.
Yep.
And going back further, it was not as much. And so I don't know how common that is. So I'm curious on that aspect too.
Yeah, why don't I'll start kind of with an overview of where we are and where we might be going. And then I think, Scott, it would be helpful to have some background on historically how the city's looked at this and when they've been implemented and why.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So so this is something that I think we're internally discussing and actually discussing a little bit at the policy level as far as whether the city should be changing any of its practices on this. For me particularly, this is a question of pedestrian crossing safety. And so that's, and I think there's a fair amount of research that shows that it can help reduce some risks for those crossing the street. The most dangerous maneuver, as I understand it, for pedestrians still remains the left turn driving movement, but if we can reduce some risks on right turn crossing movement, I think that's worthwhile. So that's what we're exploring. I think there's probably a balance. We did talk about some cities have implemented kind of like a citywide policy. New York, as I understand it, never allowed right turn on reds when it became an option across the country. I think in the 70s, maybe the 60s. And so, that is something we could explore. I think a couple key concerns on that. One, resident pushback in exchange for what, so I think we will upset some people if we make no right turn on red a citywide policy. And I don't know that at every intersection in the city, there's actually that much benefit to be gained for other safety improvements. So it's a political discussion, but I think a worthwhile and thoughtful one to have. The other piece, excuse me, is the enforcement element of this. Some of the cities that have moved in this direction recently are also cities that have the ability to do automated traffic enforcement for red light enforcement, which is something that is, I guess I'll say, somewhere between not allowed in Wisconsin and questionably perhaps legal. We'll
Not
see.
on the horizon.
But it's not on the immediate horizon due to concerns about it not being permitted. And so until we get clearer state statutes, I think is probably the current approach unless something changes. So that being said, there's also the concern of putting up all these signs and then not actually having anyone listen to them. I happen to spend a lot of time in the parts of the city that already do have no right turn on red, and I would say my anecdotal experience is compliance is questionable.
Downtown.
Yeah, downtown. There's some on the east side as well, particularly like Farwell and North is a good example where because of the intersection skew and the frequency of pedestrians, I don't know when, Scott may know, but I assume many years ago it was determined that it was a good idea to put no right turn on red on that intersection just due to the conflicts.
Humboldt was 1999.
There
That was
we
one
go.
of the oldest files I could find.
All right, there we go. And that makes sense. I mean, until recently it was a 6-leg intersection, lots going on there. Similar KK and Russell and I think it's Potter.
Yep. No, not
Potter, but KK and Russell and whatever
Logan.
the other leg is there.
Logan.
Yep. Is another one where you've just got so many complex maneuvers that it would not be safe to really allow no right turn on red for any users. So So anyways, that's kind of where we are, is trying to be thoughtful and strategic. Moving that forward is really a question of staff capacity. So it is on the goal, on the list of things we want to do.
As like capacity to like go.
Analyze the
study whether
intersections,
it's-
right, exactly, determine kind of what our approach should be, and then start, once we have a set of recommendations, start talking to policymakers about their thoughts on those recommendations. So, yeah. I don't know, Scott, if you want to provide some background on why we are where we are right now.
Sure. Yeah. So as Kevin noted, I guess our team here, we're reviewing from our side of the best way to move forward. I guess from a historical standpoint, historically we've used no turn on red restrictions at intersections with unique characteristics. We just noted some of the 5 or 6-legged intersections. We've implemented this restriction at intersections with inadequate sight distance for vehicles approaching from light or the left side of the vehicle, intersections with geometrics or operational characteristics that might result in unexpected conflicts. Most people are used to, our standard 90-degree intersections, and sometimes if that skew is different, or if there might be vehicular movements at signalized intersections, of course, where the green might be on with the walk signal for pedestrians at places that might not be intuitive for most pedestrians or drivers. So we've also, I guess historically, we've implemented the restriction at intersections where there have been a high number of crashes involving pedestrians, particularly with the right turn on red maneuver, especially involving children, older pedestrians, or persons with disabilities. The Humboldt and Brady, Humboldt and Brady. I believe that one was somewhat politically motivated. I think Mother Gloriosa was hit by a driver turning red. Or right on red. So some of those intersections with high crash rates with pedestrians. And it's mostly intersections with weird skew or, 5 or 6-legged intersections where we've implemented. I think Oakland and Locust is another one that comes to mind where there is a high volume of pedestrians out there and vehicles making turns. So intersections where there's a lot of friction between cars and peds. Recently, we've also been implementing them at some of our protected intersections.
I'm gonna say Fourth or Bell Phillips and Walnut is signed no turn on red.
Yep, that and Sixth and Walnut.
Well, yeah. Yep.
So some of these newer intersections where we're giving them protected intersection treatments where vehicles are stopping farther back from the stop bar. And we're installing islands in the roadway where it's a little bit more challenging for cars to make a right turn on red as it is. It's a little more awkward. It takes longer for that vehicle to make the turn movement. It just adds that friction to pedestrians out there. And then also as we're implementing separated bike facilities throughout the city, whether it's just a one-way directional bike flow or if it's even a two-way cycle track. We're reviewing, we are implementing no right turn on red in those cases where.
Van Buren would be an example of where you might.
Yes, yep.
You would cross that two-way bike traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the two-way cycle track where again, we're very proud of this facility for its connectivity for bicyclists in the area, and we are, bicyclists use the pedestrian signals at these cases, which at that time, perpendicular vehicular flow is receiving the red. So as vehicles are trying to make a right turn on red, the peds and the bikes are getting that green with walk signal. So, cars are used to making that right turn on red, but they're not used to looking at bicyclists, especially coming from behind in their blind spot.
Say it'd be on the cross, like Ogden or something that's crossing.
On the perpendicular movement.
Versus not on Van Buren
Yeah.
itself, because there's less conflicts. Well, there would be both,
right? It can be both. Yeah. If you're So as you're heading north on Van Buren, because the bikeway is on the east side of the street there.
Yeah.
There's some restrictions there as well.
Off the top of my head, I don't know how it's
Okay.
currently signed, but moving forward, again,
That would be a context where we would look at it. Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
yep. So again, that's just one of those situations where no one, the bicyclists, they're just following the signals as they normally would.
Mhm.
But the car is getting ready to make their right turn on red as they normally would, and there's this unexpected conflict there.
So it's really the perpendicular movement that the
Yep.
right turn on red addresses. Yeah.
Yeah, so, other things that come to mind, again, we have implemented them at the high crash intersections where there have been an abnormally high number of crashes involving peds, right turn on red. Again, we're somewhat careful about where we do introduce these. Obviously, the no right turn on red is a good thing, for the perpendicular movements. But by prohibiting turns on red, now you're also introducing more right turns on green when pedestrians and bikes are receiving the walk signals too.
Mhm.
So you are, there is a little bit more, competition for that time, if you will. So it's another one of those things where, again, we understand, the national and international research it shows that, this can be a good improvement.
Mhm.
But, again, there's other cons to it as well. So I guess that's a little bit of the historical perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, one more thing to add, and Scott, I'd ask you to confirm this, but among other types of controls that we implement, this is one that the city implements through ordinance.
Yes.
And so it does go in front of the Public Safety and Health Committee and then through the council to modify these types of controls. I'm not sure how common that is across the country, but that is what we've got locally. So.
I didn't see any of the Walnut intersections in the common council. Maybe
We should have put, I
I
remember seeing the file for 6th. I don't know.
I may just not have.
I can
searched very
check.
well.
Yeah, we could double
I can
check.
double check.
And it is possible that we, as, from a practical matter, there are times in which we will implement signage and then catch up to legislation. So it's possible that would have happened, but I think that one is in there. I'm recalling seeing it.
I think
So-
Walnut and Sixth was, but yeah, to add to Kevin's point, a lot of our recent projects, I mean, technically, we need to legislate the parking changes, which we're a little behind on that.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess, end state of that is that, and it has to go to the common council
Yeah,
either way.
yeah,
And
yeah.
whether I didn't search very well or whether it's.
Yeah, either it's,
At the end of the day, it has
either we need to catch up or maybe.
It was not, it was cursory search
Yeah,
for
sure.
a specific phrase, which.
Yep.
I think
And we may not have
very-
always been consistent
Yeah,
about.
and that's,
Yep.
it's all good.
Can I ask a question there?
Please.
Does DPW maintain a list of where all of your signage is, or do you rely on the library to maintain whatever is passed by ordinance?
No, we have a list of, everywhere it's been installed.
Okay, and do you ever compare it to
I was
what's
gonna ask.
in the ordinance?
Yeah,
Just ask
It
that.
would be nice.
I would say we-
Actually, I might do that myself. Can you just email me that list? Do you have it handy?
yeah, I mean, the best way that I would get that information is our signs database. We would run a query and see where we've had the signs installed. And Kathy, I would like to think we've done a pretty good job over the years. Again, I would say it wasn't as common throughout history as it might be in the future. So I would like to think we're pretty updated on our ordinance
It
matching.
wasn't being critical, I was
Yeah.
just curious how, if you guys just relied on them, or if you maintained your own stuff.
No, we maintain our own
Yeah.
database of where the signs have been installed. Now, with that caveat, I would say sometimes our signs go missing.
Yep.
And, we have over 130,000 signs in the city, which it's kind of hard to keep track of. So again, we rely on, feedback, which is awesome when constituents say, hey, I noticed that at Brady and Farwell and Oakland, there was you guys historically restricted turns on red, but I noticed that the sign's gone. So then we'll send staff out there to replace the missing sign.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I'll probably try to grab a list from both sides. I'll probably do stop signs too. That's a much larger list, but
That would be a very large list.
I'm curious.
Thousands of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably tens of thousands.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
It's possible, yeah. I do think it would be nice, to what Scott said, I think the no right turn on red is so limited that it probably is accurate, I would say, between our internal list and what's an ordinance, other than making sure, I guess, some of these more recent ones are trued up. But it would be nice to have the staff capacity at some point to double check everything. But because I'm sure we would find some things, among those 130,000 signs that are not consistent between the ordinance and our database. And I think the other, I guess, I always try to mention this whenever I'm talking about things like this, you can report missing signage. So if you do happen to know there's supposed to be signage there, of course you can email us, but it's also most efficient to use 286 City or the mobile action app or Click for Action. There's a few sign types like yield, stop, those types of things that have specific requests, but there is a all other signs category. So please feel free to input anything with an address location in there. That's the most efficient way for us to address it.
It's a good reminder.
So, yeah.
Are there, I guess while we're on this thread, are there other signs or controls that need to go through common council? Yield, I think.
Yeah, every regulatory control is how we've done it in the past. Again, to add to Kevin's note earlier though, a lot of other cities do not legislate or ordain regulatory controls. This is just how it's always been in Milwaukee for as long as
Yeah, are there other things, yield, stop, no turn on?
It'd be a control and then parking, right?
Yeah, parking
So,
changes.
Speed, yeah, so
that's
speed,
right.
stop, yield, are signals legislated?
So signals have not been legislated, even though they're a form of intersection
Right.
control.
Right.
We would, usually we would prepare a resolution, if it's going to be installed under certain, projects, if you will. The resolution just establishes cost participation and whatnot.
Okay.
But we have not been, honestly, we haven't really been signalizing too many new intersections just because most of them are not warranted by traditional standards. I mean, I would like to think we have a pretty good feel of what intersections are appropriate for signals versus not.
Yeah.
But again, if there's new developments in the city, where there's, let's say the new Walmart's going in and, it's cross traffic of, cars and peds and everyone is warrants the signal, then people put it in, but that hasn't been.
Have there been any signals removed recently? Off the top of your head?
Not really. We, the first thing that comes to mind actually is Downer and, Bellevue, and I forget the
Hackett.
Yes, and Hackett there. So about 2 years ago, the neighborhood was very interested in seeing how that intersection would function as an always stop.
Oh, okay.
So we essentially, after doing our outreach, we essentially programmed the signals to just flash red as they are still currently. Eventually, we're going to be removing those signals because preliminary data shows there haven't been any adverse effects.
Interesting.
From removing them, and it's been functioning. Last I checked a few months ago, it's been functioning great as an always stop. So I think moving.
The only complaints we got were that pedestrians felt more comfortable crossing the street, which I don't really consider that to be a real complaint.
I mean, at a stop sign, there is no, they should feel, right? Like,
Yeah, it was kind of, I'm not gonna, I guess, reveal more details.
Yeah,
Because
no,
I'd be
that's
picking on a
fine.
member of the public who sent this in, but yeah, there was a complaint that basically they felt like pedestrians weren't maintaining the street clear for drivers because cars were moving so slowly through the business district now.
okay, yeah.
I was like, okay.
No.
That was kind of the goal. But it was fun.
There are future projects that will get rid of stoplights
Yes.
at certain areas
Yes.
coming up here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, we do have
I was
a,
hoping Jefferson and Wells was on that list.
just got a
So-
request about that one.
Yeah.
But I guess just to what Steve's talking about, obviously we've got capital projects that are, roadway projects that we, like Lisbon, we're removing 2 signalized intersections to replace with roundabouts. We also have 2 highway safety improvement grants, which is a federal program where we will be replacing some stop controlled or partially stop controlled intersections and some signalized intersections with compact roundabouts on Holton and on 51st. And so, yeah, we are looking at ways to more safely and efficiently move everybody. Signals are they're expensive to install and they can be troublesome to maintain. So given our staffing situation, we're trying to replace them with things that are easier to maintain if we can while still maintaining safety. So, unfortunately, I do need to run to a 9 o'clock meeting.
It's all good. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
So I guess to get back to no turn on red, for the most part, it doesn't seem that a lot of residents or I guess alders are bringing those to you on a regular basis, like, because I know stop signs you get, I assume, a lot of those from residents and they're older people. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that there aren't too many requests specifically for them. Not nearly as many requests as we receive for stop signs.
Right, that's what because there's a stop sign or 2 at least every month for public.
Yeah,
health.
yeah. So this doesn't come up as much.
And is that something that like is exploring being changed? Like, are you looking for more intersections or you might add these?
Yeah, I mean,
Historically.
again, I think we're, as a department, we're kind of reviewing our practices moving forward. I imagine this implementation more so will be, I would say, more on a project by project basis, depending on, what we're building out there, whether it's protected intersections, whether it's new protected bicycle facilities, separated bike facilities, cycle tracks, things like that. And then, of course, we're always looking at intersections with high rates of crashes involving pedestrians, intersections where there is that friction more so with cars and peds and bikes. I don't know that we're really talking about like some cities. I think Arlington, Virginia is one that they just did, I think, citywide, or they did like 200 intersections maybe at once.
Yeah, I don't know that that's been a topic that has come up with any alders or DPW to my knowledge for doing it citywide. I know there's speed limit reduction has come up citywide, but that didn't make it, I don't think. So what was I gonna say? Escaped me. Did any committee members have any questions on city's approach to no turn on red?
And this may have been discussed or mentioned already, and sorry if I missed it, but a question on if residents are, noting a certain intersection, what's the best approach for them, like in contacting the city or city officials to ask about like a possibility of like a new sign installed or, other approaches?
My understanding is they'd have to, their alder person probably, since it requires legislation, they would work with DPW to study it if needed, or maybe DPW already knows that it is fine or won't work. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, most of our requests we receive do come through the alders. I think the alders like to hear what their constituents are interested in. So they send them to us that way. Of course, you're always welcome to reach out to DPW individually, whether it's me or even our dpwmill@milwaukee.gov email addresses. It's going to get to me anyway. Of course, residents are always welcome to use the Click for Action app and 286 City, the phone dispatch system. We do like residents to use those request just because it gets tracked, routed accordingly. You're always welcome. It's gonna get to me anyways, but,
Yeah.
we are proud of that app.
Yeah.
So really, I guess whatever works for the requester.
Thanks. Does that answer your question, Barry?
Yes, thank you.
Any other committee members? Or members of the public have questions or comments on no turn on red? Hearing nothing. If there's anything else you wanted to add, I know you're the expert, so.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think moving forward, we're exploring, best practices of perhaps how to implement this citywide, if at all. Again, there may be pushback from people, usually those people that are more so in a hurry to get from point A to point B. And again, I guess we are a little bit concerned too about implementing this all over and having it be hard to enforce, right? I mean, everything we do with traffic control, we want to make sure that the traveling public respects the regulations.
Right.
So.
Yeah, sorry. It looks like we did get a hand up from Rebecca. Please.
Thank you. And I think Scott knows my opinion on this. I just feel that all intersections need to be no turn on red. There's definitely the safety concern for pedestrians and bicyclists, but also I think there's too many individuals that want to turn on red and beat the traffic that has the light. I've seen that way too many times as well. So I think it's a safety concern all the way around. And especially being that I'm here kind of representing persons with disabilities, it is a big concern because many of those individuals that may be mobility device users, they sit lower to the ground and sometimes they're easy to miss. And so that's where I stand. I feel the whole state should be no turn on red, but I know it's a political time bomb. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I would also add too that it doesn't necessarily need to always be an all or nothing approach. I mean, a lot of neighboring communities implement no turn on reds when pedestrians present, or even no turn on red, say from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Or other hours, of course, when peds are more likely to be moving around.
I think the other one I've seen is when you mentioned when children are present, when streetcar present, I think is also one that I've seen.
Yeah, we due to the way that the streetcar turns and moves and the signal phasing and whatnot, there are a few intersections where we didn't feel it was appropriate to allow drivers to make a right turn on red in front of the streetcar.
Yeah.
So
these are conditional or something, right turn on or restrictions.
yeah, it's not everywhere on the streetcar route, but just some of those intersections.
Yep. Any other questions from committee members or members of the public on this topic? If not, I appreciate your time, Scott, and sharing your expertise with the city's approach here. I think
Absolutely. Looking forward to talking about this more in the future.
I hope so. Thank you. All right, our next agenda item, our next couple are actually, our next agenda item. This is the last meeting of ours for the year. Our bylaws state that we must both hold officer elections for chair and vice chair, and also set our goals for the next year as well as our schedule. But we'll start with officer elections, which typically in the past, our process has been, we will start with the chair, position. And here nominations, you can self-nominate and limited to committee members for nominations, both to make them and receive them. And after that, then we'll hear a vote, I think, I'm trying to remember.
Mitch, I have a question before we tackle all that.
Yeah,
I remember when this group first kicked off, I believe it was we all could serve a maximum of 3 years. Was that correct? And I'm wondering, are we coming up on the final year? Or am I making a mistake in the math?
you are correct. There is a limit. I'm trying to, I've got the text here. Yes, each member shall serve for a term of 3 years, not longer, and may be reappointed, but shall not serve longer than 6 consecutive years. But I think this was, we have until next year, because the ordinance was 2022. Yeah. But yes, that is a good point. But that is
good to know. I forgot about the 6-year part, that we would just be reappointed. So I was wondering what needs to sunset or what is, but it's nice to know that as we want it, we have more time.
Yeah, and that is the city ordinance, not our bylaws. And so that is, I think, much stricter. Yeah, all our bylaws say is that officers shall be nominated from the floor and elected at the annual meeting, serving for a term of 1 year. And that officers are eligible to succeed themselves. So I guess with that, we'll get started with nominations for chair. So if there's somebody, if you would like to be chair, you can self-nominate. If there's somebody else you would like to, or I guess we can give an opportunity for anybody to speak on this as well from committee members. If you'd like to say a brief statement and self-nominate or nominate somebody else, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I would be happy to continue serving as chair and would nominate myself, but I am more than happy to make space for anybody else that is interested in taking it on.
I'd like to, if there's a second for that nomination, or if that's needed, I'd like to second the nomination for Mitch.
I appreciate it. Sorry, go ahead.
This is Ben, second.
I don't think seconds are required for this one, but I do appreciate it. If there's anybody else, oh, sorry.
I just said third, sorry.
Oh, it's all good.
We just feel like such adults when we say all this.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I know it's not needed, but I'll fourth it.
Is there?
All the love.
Yes, I appreciate it. Is there anybody that would like to nominate somebody else or themselves for the position of chair for the next year? Hearing none, we can move to a vote. Currently, one person is nominated, myself. Based on the discussion up to this point, I don't know that we need to hear individual votes unless somebody would like to hear a vote from everybody. Is that required?
I can just interject. You can take a roll call vote, or you can ask if there are any objections.
That's what I was hoping. Not hearing any desire for a roll call vote. Are there any objections? Hearing none, I am happy to continue to serve as chair. I appreciate everybody's support in it. I can hopefully look forward to getting more and more done next year. But thank you all. And the other office for our committee is vice chair, currently held by Barry. I would hear nominations in the same way.
I'll nominate Barry.
Thank you, Michael.
Second.
I'm happy. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
I'm just seconding.
Yeah, I'm happy to take it on another year for the with PBAC. But yeah, just like Mitch said, if someone else really wants to jump into it, I'm happy to also share the spotlight or whatnot. But yeah, I'm happy to take it on if there's no objections or no one else is really eager to try it out.
Thanks, Barry. But I will make the space if anybody wants to nominate themselves or anybody else, please speak up. Hearing nothing, Barry is the sole nominee for vice chair, and we can either take a roll call vote if anybody thinks it's warranted or would like to. Otherwise, I will just hear any objections if there are any. Hearing none, Barry is confirmed as the vice chair for 2025. Thank you, Barry. Appreciate you being willing to do it.
Looks like my super PAC did the job here, so I'm glad to do this again.
Working the votes on a hard campaign. But thank you, Barry. If there's anything you want to add, feel free. Otherwise, let's see.
Just that I will be right back, actually. I'm the timing is wonderful, but yes, I'm just doing a quick multitask meeting here, and I will set in the chat when I'm back in the group. I'm just going away for about 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
Life of a teacher.
Thank you, Barry.
Yes, that's about right. I'm the last day of school before winter break.
What does he teach?
So our next agenda item, which is another thing that is in our bylaws, is to set our goals for the next year. There's no further definition in the bylaws, just that goals are formulated for the coming year. And I didn't really have anything specifically planned. I think for myself, it would be good to continue to engage more with, as part of projects, in whatever form that is, whether that's rides, organizing rides or walks down new projects or areas for future projects. I would also like to see us weigh in on more design alternatives for upcoming projects next year.
What about community education on how the new infrastructure is to be used and that kind of thing? Because I still see a lot of people parking in the bike lane space when they don't know that they should be parking in the parking space, because there's not much that says this is how you do this.
Yeah, I think that is a good point too, just as people in a community to find those opportunities for education. I'm not sure formally what that would look like as a committee, but I definitely hear your point on that, especially with all the new infrastructure and traffic parking patterns and layouts.
It's just stuff that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, yeah.
Thank you. there anybody else that has thoughts?
Well, in relation to that, the Bike Fed published some videos this past year that do kind of explain the infrastructure, and it's a 13-minute total YouTube video, but then it's broken down into, I think, 5 small segments. And it explains the new complete streets features. So there may be a way for the alders to share that out with their constituents in their own like regular communications.
And also to maybe bids and NIDS.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So who are those agencies that could be sharing that information, since it already does exist?
Yeah, that's a good point. The resources do exist. And I've seen the video. It is very, I think, lays it out very well for people. And getting that in front of the people that need it, or finding the organizations that can get it in front of more people.
I feel like at the moment, it's only bike people that have seen it probably.
Right. And that, I think that has been a challenge, right, is with the bike and safe streets, pedestrian kind of oriented advocacy is very like within itself, and getting out and talking to the wider populace is important.
Do you mind if I just mentioned,
Please.
we do have kind of upcoming work in education and communication about, so next year, I think you'll see a lot more from DPW in this realm. So, I mean, potentially opportunities for collaboration, but there's, yeah, so in a few different areas, so.
You know what form that it's gonna take?
No, a lot of it's being decided now,
Okay.
so, but should be some new things happening, you know, that would be great to discuss.
Yeah.
And kind of keep everyone abreast of.
Definitely. Thank you.
And that's coming through like some grants that have, you know, specific kind of communications and marketing portions about infrastructure. And then also like bike education was a resolution recently passed by and originally a footnote by Alderwoman Coggs.
Okay.
So those are the things I'm thinking of when I say that.
Any other goals that people have for next year, things we would want to work on or focus on?
I mean, I kind of said this in my introduction, but just ways that we can build upon the work that DPW is already doing with schools, and kind of analyze some of the barriers that schools may have to starting their own traffic calming if they're interested in their streets. Just school schedules are so busy, and the leaders at schools have limited capacity. So if processes aren't very transparent, then it kind of prevents them even when they identify need in their community.
Anyone else? And I would also open it up at this point if committee members don't have anything, to members of public or DPW or LRB.
There's a couple comments in the chat. I will say also, one from Barry before I don't know if Barry's back, but something about weighing in on advocacy for enforcement. And specifically thinking about red light traffic cameras. That was his comment. And then Rebecca, it looks like, I'm not sure if you've left, Rebecca, but there's a comment about going out to Milwaukee County Senior Center for presentation to capture a wide audience, possibly about the kind of education component. I think maybe what that was referring to. I don't know if Rebecca is still on the line, but those are the comments we have.
It looks like did you want to speak more to that, Rebecca?
Yes, I did. So, and I guess I wasn't very clear when I put that in. When you folks were talking about educating folks on proper parking when you have dedicated bike lanes, or maybe not necessarily dedicated bike lanes, but protected bike lanes where it might be more with delineators and people still parking in the bike lanes. I think folks that aren't used to something like that with these new approaches within the streets could be seniors. And at lunchtime, there are a lot of seniors in those senior centers. And I think it's a good opportunity to educate them about protected bike lanes and the proper parking on the streets.
Definitely. Thank you for mentioning that. I will reach out, see if we can figure something out on that. Anybody else? Were those the only comments in the chat?
I believe so. Yes.
Otherwise, I think that
One other comment in the chat, and you can feel free to take yourself off mute if you'd like. Marilyn, if you'd like, otherwise I'm happy to read the comment.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm just a citizen and I had no idea if people are permitted to speak before this group. My son always attended your meetings. He was killed in a bike car accident at Brady and Water Street 2 years ago. And I've been trying to attend your meetings since and to get more involved in bike pedestrian safety issues. And I'm hoping that this commission can help the city follow through on, even areas that have already been identified as problems. And sometimes it seems that they just, solutions need to be tucked into existing programs or there are funding solutions there, but they're just moving like molasses. And I'm just unclear about how to help or what else I can do or what other role this commission can play. But like I said, it's been 2 years and at least for his particular intersection, which has been already identified as a high accident area. So if you're looking at goals, just to help achieve the ones that have already been set, I would guess. And that's just my request, and let me know if there's some more that citizens can do to help.
Yeah, thank you. And I am really sorry about what happened to your son. There's a ton of work that still has to be done. And I do think there are more opportunities today for advocates to make a difference. If there's a way that I can reach out to you or vice versa, that would be great. My email is pbac@mitchellhinkie.com. If you could send me an email or similar, that I would really appreciate it. And I think your point is really, really well made.
Could you please repeat your email for me and spell? Is it
I can put it in the chat. This is right?
Yes.
2 L's with it.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to put it in the chat.
Great, and I'll follow up. Thank you for your help and for listening.
No, of course. Thank you.
I think that across the board, again, this is Stephen Hunter. I'm new to the committee. I'm a biker, a commuter of 20 years with Red Bike Green. And, we talk about silos across the city and we use words like collaboration. But true collaboration is relationship building. And, being very intentional about breaking down boundaries and that kind of thing. I think that there's a lot of ways that we have not really just been forward with addressing like bike safety, pedestrian safety. And as it relates to like people understanding that a bike safe city is just a safer city. Mm-hmm. And how much more benefits it brings to a city and social impact and social well-being and all those kinds of things. And I know that, it was like, well, funding and different things, but getting this messaging out in front of like youth organizations, say even like the Environmental Youth Collaborative that has been formed in the past couple of years, that, 15 different environmental organizations that hire between 150 and 200 teen and college age interns over the summers who are very interested in blue and green and that all the points of connectivity within all of that, and the Green Schools Consortium that happens with Reflow at the end of the summer. That's messaging, because some of these organizations are like, man, because transportation, right? And if kids could bike to their jobs, their internships in blue and green spaces in Milwaukee, so all of this goes together. So if we, keep finding these intersections and keep supporting the intersections with all the things that, make Milwaukee, a really cool place, we just make that much more organic and just free flowing and just getting out there and build the relationships with organizational heads, having conversations, with teams and different groups and whatnot, about how all this stuff works and why it's good. And, I don't see enough of that kind of conversation, particularly in partnership with organizations. Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Our work to, I think, engage with other organizations has been more limited. It's something that I think we could do better at Bike, but obviously we've worked with on a lot of things, but outside of that, I don't know that it is. And so I would encourage committee members to do that. Like if there's other groups that you're a part of, and there's opportunities to connect our work here with other work, I think that a lot of good could be done. Thank you. It looks like Barry has his hand up. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, forgive me. And again, I stepped away for 5 minutes right after I put something in the chat. So was what I mentioned already talked about, and it would be redundant for me to weigh in on things again, or not, just with enforcement of red or the idea of red light cameras. I don't know the latest of state politics with it, but I'm wondering if that is something that we might want to weigh in on.
I think we did not talk about it. But for me, without any movement, at least at the city level, to try to change, because it requires state law change, or if they would like state law changes to make it.
Pretty sure that it's in our ledge package, and actually we're updating the city's ledge package. We're going to be right after the first of the year, because it's a 2-year package, and so I'm pretty sure red light cameras are still going to be in there. So it's an ongoing thing that the city is mindful of, and that we're lobbying for, to the extent that you can lobby for 800 things at the same time.
Sure.
Because our ledge package is pretty big, but that is on the city's radar.
Yes. And so I think,
and I know that, I know that the mayor and the county executive have both, been advocating for it too. And so I wasn't sure if that was something that just where we have kind of weighed in on other things or helped with grant writing letters and such to DOT, et cetera, if that is something that's just where we, weigh in on being a part of that kind of conversation too, or that kind of advocacy.
I think at this point, I don't know that there's much impact we could have. The city is advocating for state law.
Well, let me double check with Justin and see if it would be helpful to have like a letter of support that he could take, that the city could take to the state.
Yeah, and that I think is a critical piece, because that's what I'm
thinking.
Yeah, let me check with Justin.
Where we've been asked for our stance for grants or other policies.
From what I know on a state level, that's a dead in the water right as soon as it gets to the Capitol. But not that it wouldn't help if everybody started writing into those people at the Capitol and tell them that you would really like to see this, because we don't have the capabilities to, from a public safety standpoint, patrol these things.
Come in, please.
So
Right, right. I think that I will make a note of that. And if you do hear something that it would be helpful for us to do that, definitely let me know.
I mean, because if nothing else, even if it's a dead issue right now, but 5 years from now,
Right.
the letter is still.
I mean, getting that advocacy out there now is probably helpful, especially for some of these younger assembly people and stuff that are in the state that, you know, they might be persuaded in the future. A lot of these guys are not gonna get persuaded anytime soon, but.
Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, for me, I can say like, just in my neighborhood, near West Side Concordia neighborhood, like that is talking about anything with my neighbors, pedestrian and bicycling and just city quality life, you know, like that is the number one thing of just still like, and I see it too, plenty of running red lights on 27th Street and all of that. And again, I know it's been a frustratingly immobile issue, so to speak, from the state, but you know, that's where I just thinking of like, well, what can we at least do that can give us a sense of agency on that issue?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see what language is being advocated for. Last time this was meaningfully up at the state level was like 2019. And there were no provisions in there to where the funds generated from those tickets would go, which I think is a really key equity piece. And then also no provisions on the distribution of those so that they wouldn't adversely affect any particular community.
Yes, I think those are good points. And that,
The location of the cameras?
yeah. And I think that, I mean, I guess it would depend on the state legislation because that they could have those restrictions there otherwise, or they might leave it up to the city. And I think that is kind of where we would want to get involved.
Right.
If there is state legislation at that level, or if it's up to the city and they're crafting their policy, definitely I would hope we would be involved there. Are there any other comments in the chat or?
I don't see any. Just a comment if you would, I think you may hear from Jessica Weinberg in the next.
Oh, yes, she did email me.
Yeah, a couple months or whenever, but that would be, this would be another good topic to bring up with her as well as it'll.
I see.
Another topic maybe to bring up with Jessica, and it relates back to Mrs. Mastrioni's son, is kind of the concept of a rapid response team has come up in plans, that there would be agents from DPW, resident groups, that when there was a crash, people would go out and study what happened in that particular instance for that person on a bike or that person walking. It's a reactive measure rather than proactive, but I think it's a policy worth investing in, especially from the resident advocacy piece, so that when something happens, people feel the city showing up in a formal way and that they know who to talk to about changes.
And this is something that has come up. I know, because I was looking at whether that's something we should do as a committee. It would be, I think, a larger thing to take on, not that we couldn't, but I know that there are, I think I was looking at Washington DC does something like that, where they will see like a crash happens with serious injury or worse, and they'll take a look at, you know, what it's in the police report or whatever other reports are available, and you know, make advocacy or recommendations based on that. And so I don't know that the city has any plans to do it, but that wouldn't prevent us necessarily from kind of being that. So I think it's something to consider.
I think it would be important though to make sure we get buy-in from the police department in terms of accident scene investigation, being able to get access to certain information. You know, because it's not like we as a committee would be going out and and taking the measurements and, the things that the police do to investigate a crash scene.
Right.
We wouldn't want to be duplicating that, and in fact, we would probably run afoul of all kinds of stuff if
Right.
we started trying to do that ourselves. But perhaps building a relationship with the police departments to get access to that information, and perhaps more complete information than might be in the formal police report.
And that is where because they do make police reports available. I don't know if you have access to it through community labs or whatever it is at University of Wisconsin that collects the crash reports from all over the state. You can request the detailed one. It's however many pages long. They've got drawings and things. And so I don't know that we would necessarily want to replace that aspect. Is that?
It's more of not a technical, I mean, the technical piece could be there, but it's more just the partners and community coming out formally to recognize that space, because when something happens, it's unfortunately an opportunity to bring people together. And it is listed in the city's Safe Routes to School strategic plan as one of the near-term actions. That's particular in the lens of a youth fatality or a youth crash.
So there is some, I guess, prior commitment on some level.
And it's something that's come up in the Vision Zero conversation. So somewhere in Jessica's data, that's, right. I don't know where it fell, how the community felt about that as a strategy, but it was in the process.
I think I remember it with all the Post-its and on the board.
Yeah.
And everything. Okay. Yeah, I will reach out to her on both of those things, I
think that is important to, people come out to physically bear witness, right, and say, we're here and we see this. Mm-hmm. We are concerned for what happens next. The social well-being piece.
Yeah, if the city already has some prior, not efforts, but commitment to it, and it's related to the Vision Zero or Safe Routes and Safe Routes to School. I'll reach out to Jessica. I don't know because I know they have a large list of things.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to her and see kind of where Vision Zero work is at with respect to rapid response analysis or recommendations.
Well, and the other thing with the rapid response is sometimes if it's like a crash, that the momentum is lost sometimes if it's not a fatality. If like there was a student hit near Highmount who broke their arm. So not a fatality, but that particular stretch of Lloyd is constantly an issue for crossing. So like kind of capturing those concerns while it's prescient.
Mm-hmm.
There's one question in the chat from Rebecca Orbatten about asking if there's currently a committee member from MPD, noting that there was in the past.
That's a good question. So the ordinance did legislate that we have a public safety, I think, representative, or public safety or public health.
Yeah.
And I think we did have one on the Bike and Pedestrian Task Force, our previous iteration. We've never had one as the advisory committee. I think and this would be a non-voting member similar to our DPW representatives and DCD representatives, Stephen and Monica respectively. And I think we were in conversations with the Department of Health to have somebody. I don't know that we've ever heard from the police department on having a representative, but I think it is a good point to try to get that filled.
Well, is it the chair of public safety that's supposed to actually appoint that position?
Yes, I can.
Because I don't recall where the public safety person comes from.
They're appointed by the mayor.
Oh, okay.
The ordinance says.
Not made by the chair of public safety, right?
Yes, the appointments are distributed, 3 by the mayor, 3 by the common council president, 1 by public works chair, 1 by public safety and health committee chair, 1 by the commissioner of the Department of Public Works. Then the mayor appoints DCD, DPW representatives, as well as a representative of the Safety Commission of the Police Department, Fire and Police Commission, or the Health Department.
So we should contact the mayor to see if we can get an appointment. Okay.
But I think that is a good point. We've been it'll be 2 years that this has existed, and we have not had,
I was gonna say, if we talk to Jessica, she might be able to
yeah, because
move that along a little bit.
Vision Zero is in the mayor's office. Okay, yeah, so I'll make another note for my email to Jessica, to add that. Okay. Barry, you still have your hand up? Is that?
I just re-raised it.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's, I mean, for PBAC members who've heard me mention this before, and for others I've talked to over the months, this is kind of one of my little passion projects that I think would, you know, just given all of our own limits and the limits of what DPW can do and all of like their good work, I still am always looking for further wayfinding beyond just apps on my phone. And especially like with the students I work with who may not always have phones either. We're trying to not always have them on their phones, to have like, so a lot of you have heard me talk about the need for paper maps again and such, and how that could possibly be done. So this is more just me bringing it up as something to, like, at least for me personally, I would still like to have it on the back burner of my mind in the coming year. And I'm bringing this up to the group too, because I think this is definitely something we would need to partner with others on. And as people, you know, in their own lines of work and their contacts, think of people who could maybe help us with, say, the graphic design of something, or something that could be like, even if it's just a request through a certain website for a printed map, where we don't have several of them always at the library necessarily. It's just one of my little projects I'd love to like help with. So if anyone knows someone else who'd like to partner in on this project or would like to be in touch with me, just by all means reach out. But that's certainly something I'd love to see get going.
Yes, thanks, Barry. I was in Madison and I was looking at, they had pretty good paper maps, and it was really helpful. People that aren't necessarily familiar with an area to be able to look at something big all at once and lay it out on a table.
One just additional comment from Claire saying that a lot of seniors don't have smartphones and are not comfortable using them. So agreement, the paper maps could be helpful. Thank you, Claire.
Yes, thank you. I think we've talked about a lot of things for 2025, and we've got this, looking at the notes, I think a full slate of things. And so I am content with our goals for 2025. If anybody has anything else they want to add before we move on, please speak up. Otherwise, the next item for our kind of end of year thing is to set our schedule for the upcoming year. I think I would be fine with maintaining the schedule we have now, which is the third Friday of every month. But if there are folks that feel differently, I guess I'll default to suggesting that we do that, because figuring out a different time seems difficult. So I guess the choice would be commit to the third Friday or table it, and we'll have to converse via email or something to figure out a better time.
And the time is technically 8:30 to when?
So
Yes.
we don't have an end time.
Oh, okay.
As long as it takes, some are shorter, some are longer. So we're usually not over 2 hours generally. I guess I'll start with, does anybody oppose keeping the schedule that we have now?
I don't love it. I wouldn't mind a discussion about changing it. but I could be swayed to keeping it.
Is it the time more so?
Time and day. The task force, the previous iteration of this committee, well, Mitch, you would know better than I think it was Wednesday afternoons or evenings. I found that to be a more accessible day and time, but I'm amenable.
Yeah, so if this works-ish enough, I think, so I guess what I'll propose is we continue with what we have now, but we should chat collectively to see if there's a time that we can change to, because I think we can change the schedule if we want beyond the next month.
As long as you notice it. I mean, truly, you don't have to set your meetings, it's good practice to do it, but you can change them anytime you want, as long as you provide proper notice.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, and I think that is kind of what I was hoping to get to, was I think it's helpful to plan for the year so that people can plan it out, but if we want to change, we can, as long as we.
And just as a suggestion, in terms of making it more accessible, you could alternate, like months. 1 month it would be during the day, and then 1 month it could be in the evening, or every third month or something. Because then you would also, that would have the benefit of allowing more of the public to come, and getting more input, more feedback, more engagement.
Right.
Kind of in a more organic way, rather than you having to go out and knock on people's doors.
Do you know if there are existing committees that do like an alternating schedule? Offhand, if you don't, that's.
I really don't know. There's a lot of the smaller committees that they could. I just don't.
Yeah, no, that's.
I have no idea.
Totally. I appreciate it.
This is Ben again. I really like the sound of that, because if I'm remembering correctly, when we formed this committee, we also had a lot of members who are no longer active. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was the nature of our discussion was trying to be inclusive for committee members' schedules, but also accessible to the public, and that was that was the debate. So if there's a way that we can maximize accessibility for everyone,
yeah,
maybe that looks like having a swing shift schedule meeting time. I don't know. Thank you for suggesting that. That's a good. I like it a lot.
Actually, I like that idea too. I think that sounds good. It's kind of a compromise, and then it also, does help with accessibility to have it sometimes in the evening, sometimes during the day like this.
I guess, is it all right if I ask you, Ben, and anybody else that's interested in like proposing and like working with people to find a different schedule? Would you be willing and able to work on that?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
So like before we decide to change a schedule, I would like kind of more deeper discussions with all of the committee members. Not everybody's present here today. And I don't know that I have the capacity to do that. And so I'm asking if you would be able to, coordinate with all of the committee members to see whether it's an alternating schedule or a different time schedule, whether that is something we could do.
Could that be an agenda item for next time, or?
I think I would rather figure it out outside of a meeting. And then we could have a brief discussion during a meeting, but I think it's going to require a lot of back and forth amongst committee members to see what works. And I'd rather figure that out
Like putting
offline.
out a doodle poll kind of something? Like
Yeah,
would you rather, what are good times for a swing schedule?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yes,
one
that
thing-
sounds good. Sorry, excuse me.
Go ahead, Mona.
Oh, sorry. One thing I'll mention, if I know often these committee meetings might have presentations from staff members. So that might be one thing to consider as you're looking, for dates that are convenient. Sometimes like asking DPW staff or other staff, to chime in and inform things it might be a little more challenging outside of, not impossible, but it might make it a little more challenging to schedule that outside of work hours.
Yeah, I think we have to limit ourselves to within work hours because of that, because we also have a staff member from DPW who has normal work hours and would
We do.
prefer to not.
We are planners. We work often in the evenings as well. I would say I would like to talk to our team though about what is feasible for, I can't represent us on that question just by myself at the moment.
Right, I don't, yes,
Yeah.
and that's why I think I would rather not ask it at this point.
Yeah.
If you want to, if you're able to
I would
talk
love-
internally.
Yeah, and I'd love to participate in like the offline discussion about what's feasible for our team as well. And Mike would be the
Yes.
good person to take point on that
Cool.
on our behalf.
Yeah, that would be great.
Great.
Does that sound good, Ben?
Yeah, sounds good.
And this could be one of those things like the chess metaphor of not the best move, but the least bad move. And I think like Ben, how you noted, like this time on Fridays may not be ideal, but I think for right now, we kind of just, at least in the past, kind of saw it as like, well, this seems to be the best possible at the time. And so, as we're seeing even now in this discussion, we could keep tying ourselves into different knots about it. So I like the idea of just like Google polling and like reaching out. And if we change it where it works, great. But, there's never going to be, I think, a win-win-win for all of us on this is the ideal time.
Yeah, and so I think with that, we can plan to meet in January on the third Friday, and we'll add an agenda item to discuss, if there's a conclusion on the new time and cadence or days of the week for meeting. Then does that work for everybody?
Sounds good.
Cool, thank you. Right, so the next agenda item is work groups. Did any of the work groups get a chance to meet? And I guess this is also an opportunity for Michael to join a work group if there's an opening or interest, but we'll start with any updates from work groups. Any of the members of target improvements or projects or policies has anything to share?
I can just say, and it's been brought up over the couple months, I know, and I've brought it up as it's been happening and such, but yeah, just to kind of go back again, we're seeing how some of that wayfinding signs on like the Bike Boulevard of Washington or on 32nd Street near the Hank Aaron Trail, on 37th Street in Silver City near the Hank Aaron, how that, has been installed. The bike lanes crossing on the Hank Aaron Trail have been restriped in the last 6 or so weeks. And I know where we all wanted, and I certainly wanted, a wider median strip on 70th Street for the Hank Aaron crossing, but we do have some bump outs that were put together there, which I have, as someone who bikes that area at least a couple times a week, like it has made crossing much easier. So it's just one of those things, like in terms of something that we talked about in targeted improvements and was something that our group has advocated for. I just want to, once again, end of the year, just give a shout out to everyone who worked on that and to DPW, and just, I think it's been a real nice success.
Thanks, Barry. Is there anybody from the projects work group? Let's see if I can find the list. Let's see. Projects is Montavious, who's not present, Ben, and Anna, who is also not present, and Stephen. Did you guys get a chance to meet at all or discuss anything?
No.
Afraid no.
All good. And the last one is policies, which is Anna, Montavious, who are not present, as well as Aaron and Kathy and Stephen. I have you as being members of policy.
Yes, we did not meet. I'm not quite sure why the appointment was on the calendar, but.
Yeah, checked in and nobody's there, so.
Oh, bummer. Okay, I will, go ahead.
Can you just say a list of the work groups?
So the work groups are targeted improvements, projects, and policies.
What's projects?
So projects is looks at larger upcoming projects for DPW to make recommendations potentially on design alternatives. that have come up. It's not, yeah, and it's not limited to that, but larger projects.
Okay, so you said policies, target improvement projects that.
Targeted improvements is one which is focused on smaller kind of interventions like Barry was discussing. Signage near the Hank Aaron State Trail as well as bump outs. And because that's not a huge project, that is just a small improvement to an existing piece of infrastructure. And then the last one is policies, which is focused on like city policies, like.
So it's those three.
Yep.
Okay.
And we have the previously dormant strategic partnerships and communications. Are currently dormant, previously active. And so each committee can have up to 4 voting members, which means that currently projects has an opening as well as policies. And Montavious leads the projects working group and Anna leads the policies work group. And so if you're interested, Michael, in either or both of those, they meet, the work groups kind of meet monthly-ish as well before the full meetings to discuss things and potentially bring things to vote. But they're limited in size because we have to stay below quorum.
Okay. Not at the moment.
Yeah, and that's fine.
But Barry, the two of us should get together to talk some of your wayfinding stuff, just on other things I've got going on, outside of our role here.
Sounds great.
So
You have my email, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, be in touch.
Cool. So hearing nothing else from work groups, though I encourage the work groups to meet prior to our next meeting. The next item on the agenda is new business, which is things that we plan to discuss next month if there is anything. And I made a note of the scheduling item, so we can talk about our schedule for next year and what's come of the offline discussion. I don't know if there's anything else, if DPW has anything that they would want to discuss next month.
It might be good to check in on some of the upcoming protected bike lane projects and see if any of them are ready to share before the meeting. Everyone will want to get to a certain spot in their process before they present, because I know Oklahoma had been in discussion in the past. They weren't ready to present at this meeting, so it'd be worth checking in.
Do you know if there are other projects along those lines?
Well, there are 2 other similar projects on a similar timeline, which would be the Hopkins Street Protected Bike Lane Project and the Walnut Lisbon Protected Bike Lane Project. So those could be, you know, if not in January, at another meeting early in the year.
And what would we expect, like alternatives, or, and I mean, not even alternatives, I guess, but like design-ish?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm curious what PBAC would like to see in terms of project review, and I can't speak for every project or project manager, but we'll have, you know, speaking for the Hopkins project specifically, we'll have some, you know, alternatives at some point early in the year to discuss for certain tricky areas, and then likely an overall alternative. So I mean, to get specific, many of the projects will we'll be looking at either one way in each direction protected bike lanes or a protected cycle track. That's at a very high level, an idea of like what an alternative could look like, but that has a lot of implications for like certain intersections or things like that. So
Yeah, I think that at least what I would be looking for is like what is difficult to change, like things that are not necessarily worth focusing on. And this is where you're not sure or looking for feedback. That's kind of like what I would be looking for, but others can feel free to speak up if there's elements that they would want to hear from DPW when it comes to getting a presentation on projects. But outside of that, I think, yeah, we can check in on those 3 projects. Just for anybody that didn't hear, it was Oklahoma, Hopkins Street, and Walnut Lisbon, all of which were announced a while ago. So I think there's DPW web to the Engage for all of 3 of those.
yes, and I know plenty of people on this call have already provided comments on those websites. Please feel free to do so if you haven't. And then, yeah, so we're in similar timelines in which, will be developed, either have alternatives that are in the process of being developed or will be developed in the next like month and a half, 2 months. So that's why
Yeah, is the
them
plan
together.
for construction?
2026.
Okay, so the year after next. Okay.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
That's as far as I know.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. And the website for those listening is engage.milwaukee.gov.
Yes.
As a list of upcoming projects where you can share your feedback. There's quite a number. There's a couple dozen at least. That sounds good to me. Is there anything else that we wanted to make a note of to potentially discuss during next month's meeting?
You had that email from Jessica.
Yes, and oh yeah, Jessica, I'll make note of that too. The potential for an update on Vision Zero action plan update. That's what it was.
Okay.
That too.
DPW presented to this group on the elevated crosswalks that got installed this past year.
I don't think so, like just in general or on a specific.
I would just be interested if there's like any pre-post data going along with those.
It's a good question. I know that
From what I know, we're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they just went in this last year,
Right.
so it's 1 year's data is not good.
Right.
That's not good.
but it's something that you're collecting and would be able to.
I don't know if we're collecting anything on the raised crosswalks specifically, but we are trying to see like what's happening with the speeds and stuff on the roadways where we did put those in.
Okay. And I assume for other projects, to any project, most of them.
I mean, I don't know, I can't speak outside of my department, but like, yeah, we're trying to keep an eye on it when.
For like yeah.
Project stuff, but yeah.
And I bring that one up too because that project was connected to like school zones largely, so it's kind of my lens.
Yeah.
We do for the multimodal projects evaluation.
Do the raised crosswalks count as multi?
No, they do not, no. So.
But for multimodal projects, you'll do a speed study or observational things? Or?
Exactly. So we can, and through our public meetings or advisory committee meetings, usually reporting on our initial speed study is a part of that kind of like base data, and then after the project is implemented.
I mean, I would be like, it doesn't necessarily have to be on an agenda item every time, but if there's ever results, I would be definitely interested in getting those. I'm
kind of curious. I know we're if anyone I could try to pull it up. My computer isn't letting me, but Marissa or Isabel, if you have access to that statistic that was created by the health department, that would be an interesting thing to just bring up here. We did a little evaluation of all the projects in the last couple of years and how much speed has reduced, and worked with person at the health department to do kind of a statistical analysis of that. And I believe it's 26% reduction in, I'll follow up if this is wrong, 26% reduction in people driving over the speed limit and 46% reduction in people driving 10 miles per hour or more over the speed limit. And that I think, but there, oh, Marissa, do you have it?
I was gonna say,
Yes,
Danya, that's correct. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
agreed.
And that's a couple years of data across many projects. I think they controlled also for ADT. So
Average annual daily traffic.
yeah,
Average
annual
annual.
daily traffic. Yeah.
Is that something we want to discuss next week? So you guys can do a full presentation on it for next month?
We have that one statement that was done. So, I mean, we could talk about it again if we'd like, but.
I think if you could just share it with me via email.
Yeah.
Any of those reports or studies or analyses, that would be great. But it sounds like raised crosswalks are not necessarily being studied in the same way.
Not a part of that particular analysis, no.
So, but if you do, if there, I guess you look at crashes prime, I assume you're talking along timeframes, you're looking at crash result.
Typically, especially for like a major project where we redid an entire roadway, you just pushed all that traffic onto a different roadway for an entire year. So everybody needs a year or two to get back to their normal patterns of driving. Yeah. So right now those statistics aren't good right now. You know, I mean, you're gonna see obviously probably reduction in speed and stuff like that, but like you won't get the accurate, like the traffic went back here finally. So now it's what actually is happening. It's what we would normally study before doing a project.
Yeah.
You know, so
if there, like, I guess for any projects that happened, any like that analysis is ready, I would be interested in getting.
I mean, I can look and ask around and see what everybody else is doing and see if we have anything.
Yeah, that would be great. It doesn't necessarily need to be something we plan to meet and talk about at an agenda or on the agenda. But it would be interesting to see if there is something. I can definitely share it and we can discuss it if there's something to discuss.
Yeah, I just bring it up because it's there's always the backlash to some of our traffic calming infrastructure. So it's more so of like empowering this committee and residents to be able to like have those data points to share. Well, this is what the science is showing us is happening at these intersections.
Yeah, definitely. And I think DPW has done some of that, but I think sharing it more widely so that it's more accessible is a key part of that. So I'll make a note of that follow up, just to make sure that we get the analysis that has already been done, if I haven't gotten it by next month. Otherwise, I think, is there anything else we want to potentially discuss next month? Otherwise, we can move into our final agenda item, events and announcements. So if anybody has any events, bike rides, group rides, public meetings for projects from DPW or otherwise, bike fed events, now is the time to share them. Rebecca?
I just wanted to make sure that any actual committee member had an opportunity to speak first in regards to announcements. So I received from the Great Lakes ADA Center that yesterday morning, DOJ adopted PROAG. So big thing, and it goes into effect January 17th. So that is big news.
Can you say more about that?
PROAG is public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. Before, I mean, they were just guidelines and considered best practice by federal highway admin if a state or local government had not adopted their own standards for design for the public right-of-way. And it's been a long process of getting this finally passed. They had public input several times, and they finalized the language last August, in August of 2023, and then opened it up for public comment, and that was at the end, I believe, of September. What I was hearing from my contact at Federal Highway Admin, that they didn't expect it to be adopted until sometime in the spring. For those of us that work with people with disabilities in the ADA world, after the election, there was a big concern then, what's going to happen with PROAG? Because in consideration that Donald Trump in his first administration had said for every new regulation, you had to eliminate 2 regulations for every one new one. So it was like, how is this going to work? So it's kind of interesting that it's been adopted and it's going into effect on January 7th, and he will be sworn in. I think it's on either January 20th or 21st. So now there is national standards for design for public right of way, unless it's your state or local government is more restrictive.
I see. So this establishes a new baseline for public right-of-way accessibility.
It's similar to NACTO or anything else that we use, but yeah,
so things
for
like
us as the engineers, like it helps us to justify doing a lot of the stuff that we're talking about.
So these things like
a lot of that
crosswalks or curb ramps.
Correct.
Or I guess
even clearance on the corners and everything else that we've been trying to put through, like, yeah, it's all been there.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. And so I assume that means any project that is currently in the pipeline would have to meet
Some
those.
we're gonna need some updates right now, yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca. And I will add our monthly bike ride, monthly critical mass ride. This month is December 27th, week from today, 6 p.m. at Red Arrow Park. I think we'll be going through River West-ish area. So it'll be a short ride, slow pace, okay, or social pace. Yeah, it's just a good time. Any other events?
Slow season at the Bike Fed, but
I think that's fine too.
Bike Week was formally announced for June 1st to June 8th. So it looks like there's already dates for
Promise Zone Ride,
the Pride Ride, and a closer collaboration with UPAF and the Performing Arts Ride on the 1st.
Right. Because of
And then midweek, lots of opportunity to host your own events.
Excellent. Are there any public meetings coming up?
I think we're in a bit of a slow or, end of year. I can't think of any.
No, we usually do them in the spring, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to check my calendar. Because I don't have any written down.
I believe
Most people are very busy this time of year, so it's hard to get them to come out for a meeting.
I don't even know if we have any coming up in January. Marissa or Isabel, curious if you have anything that you can think of.
Not that I'm aware of.
Great.
I'll mention for Department of City Development, the West Side Area Plan, we do have a virtual meeting coming up for the West Side Area Plan. I will send a link in, but we had a public meeting December 5th, kind of a kickoff meeting. This is going to be kind of the virtual version of that meeting. So if you are a resident in that area, please feel free to attend, and I'll find a link here soon and drop it in.
Do you have the date and time handy?
Yeah, so it's January 8th. It's a Wednesday evening starting at 6:00 p.m. and it'll be approximately an hour. And here is the link to the project website.
Thank you. Put that in the minutes.
Awesome, appreciate it. Any other events or announcements from committee members or members of the public? Not. That is great. Busy time of year. We can move on. I guess that is our last agenda item, unless somebody has a last minute event or announcement. I would hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Barry.
That's watching kids.
Motion by Michael, seconded by Barry. With that, we are adjourned. Everybody, thank you for attending. Thank you for everybody that attended and spoke. DPW as well, appreciate it. Otherwise, yeah, everybody have a great holidays. Yeah, we'll see you next year. Thanks.